You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, El Charisse. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives. Episode 115, Speaking Cabo Verdeanu. Hello, language lovers. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Speaking Tongues, the podcast in conversation with multilinguals. This week, I'm honored to have this discussion about Cabo Verdeanu with Jon of Learn Cabo Verdeanu and Cabo Verdean linguist Adeleide Monteiro. In this week's episode, we're learning how Cabo Verde and Kabuverdianu, the language, grew together. We learn the exact city where the language originated and why we use the term Cabo Verdeanu when talking about this creole. Jon and Adelaide talk to us about the structure of the language, including why it's important to include the subject and how this structure differs from Portuguese. Adelaide tells us about West African languages that have influenced the structure and how linguists today are using technology to gather information on Cabo Verdeanu in real time. Adelaide tells us about Portuguese creoles from other countries that can be understood by Cabo Verdeans, and Jon tells us about food and music to experience in Cabo Verde, which I myself cannot wait to partake of in person. Stay tuned through the episode to find out which word that yours truly already knew in Cabo Verdeanu and why I knew this word. Spoiler alert, there is singing involved. Gigantic, huge, over land and sea. Thank you to Jon and Adelaide for this conversation and for sharing the beauty and majesty of Cabo Verde, its language, culture, traditions, and people with all of us. If you enjoy episodes of Speaking Tongues, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Speaking Tongues podcast on Apple Podcasts, and like and subscribe on YouTube so that other language lovers like yourselves can find the show. And if you've been a longtime listener of the show or even a recent listener, you can now pledge ongoing support for the show on buymeacoffee.com or on patreon.com. And as you know, I wrote a book. My food zine of international language and cuisine, Taste Buds Volume 1, is available now for purchase. Check social media for the sneak peek inside the book and make sure you purchase one for yourself and one for your friends. Links to all platforms are in the show notes. Okay, let's chat. Welcome back to a new episode of Speaking Tongues. I'm here today with Jon and Adelaide. How are you both today?
I'm good, thank you.
Doing very good. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to talk to you both about Cabo Verdeanu. I have so much to learn. And I'm just going to say, for people listening straight off the bat, I am dying to visit Cabo Verde someday. It's high on my list. So this is such a treat for me to have an opportunity to talk about your language and your culture. And I can't wait to learn so much from both of you.
Well, thanks again for
Thank
the
you so
opportunity.
much for this opportunity too.
And we can't wait
Absolutely.
for you to visit Cabo Verde.
I'll be there as soon as possible. I like to start each episode with the same question, and that is, what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak, to both of you?
My first language was Cape Verdean Creole or Cabo Verdeano. All my family speak criolu and around, okay, and around. I listen to Portuguese, but I didn't speak yet. Okay, but my first language was Cabo Verdean.
Okay.
And so my first language is English. I learned Portuguese, and then from Portuguese, learned Cabo Verdeanu or Cape Verdean Creole. So that's my language experience there.
Amazing. Amazing. Jon, what led you to learning Portuguese as an English speaker? Like, what drew you to the Portuguese language itself?
Growing up, my family, I grew up in Chicago. So, Chicago is a diverse city. But my parents always emphasized the importance of learning other languages
Okay.
because you learn to have empathy for other people. You learn to you learn that other people do have really, really good ideas. Just because they can't speak your language, it does not mean they have a lesser education or they're less educated than you. And so with that, I felt that at the time, I didn't want to learn or study Spanish just because I felt like everyone was speaking Spanish.
Right.
So I stumbled upon Portuguese music. I thought it sounded pretty nice, it sounded pretty cool. And when I moved to New York, I was around some friends who were from Brazil. So afterwards, I started to study Portuguese. I would spend a lot of time in the ironbound section. Well, you know, the ironbound section of
In
Jersey.
Newark, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I spent a lot of time down there and started just kind of spending a lot of time with the Portuguese community. Afterwards, I made several trips to Brazil, and after my studies in Portuguese, I did get to a point where I was able to do some translation and interpretation work in Portuguese. And then from there, uh, the same, and we're going to get into it a little bit, but a lot of times the same communities of Portuguese speakers and Cape Verdeans from that East Coast in the States, a lot of times they're kind of in the same, they'll connect in a lot of the same communities,
Mm.
right? So it was from there, just from being around the same group, that I ended up meeting my wife, who's originally from Fogo.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah. So they immigrated to the States when she was about 15. And then from there, that's when I started to really pique my interest into learning and studying Cabo Verdeano because whenever I would talk to my mother-in-law and I would ask her, well, why is it organized this way? She said, you just say it the way you want. There's no rules. And I said, no, there's rules to a language.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it was after that that I started to really dive deep into studying Cabo Verdeano.
Very cool. So tell me from both of you, what is so interesting and what is so unique about Cabo Verde? What do you think is so special and so unique about the culture, the language, the geography, anything?
So I think we are normal, but, but the way we appear, okay, the way my country and my people, my culture, my language born, I think it's unique because they born together. These islands have no one here. So when Portuguese was there, they needed to bring everything. Uh, people, different people with different culture, different race. I don't know race. Portuguese, Italian, and African as a slave, and Cape Verdean people doesn't exist.
Mm.
So I think what is special is this: we create the
Right.
people, the culture, and the language in these islands, in these 10 islands, but first in Cidade Velha, today's old city from Cape Verde.
Wow.
And just to piggyback on that, that's one of the things that I find amazing about Cape Verde is that how many she mentioned Cidade Velha.
Hmm.
So how many locations in the world can you narrow it down and you can say, you know what? It was in this city that this language developed.
Wow.
A lot of times linguists, when we're studying, we'll do that with the region. It's in this region of Europe, it's in this region of Africa that this language developed. But when it comes to Cape Verde and when it comes to Cidade Velha, you can say, well, this is the cities. These are where the first speakers of this language were. So to me, I think that's amazing. The not just that the people and the culture all develop together, but that you can find an actual location. You could pinpoint a location. And I
Right.
think that says a lot to um, Cape Verdeans being able to really feel a connection with their ancestors, really feeling a connection with those who paved the way, is that they can go back.
You know, as you're saying that, it really makes sense. Like, you don't think of an origin of a language or even a culture just originating because we don't know, but you can look at this culture there in Cape Verde, and it's like, knowing where it came from must instill so much pride in the people and so much pride in the culture, because you have that lineage that you can understand and maybe trace back very clearly. Let's talk about the language itself so we can orient the listeners. I know that, and Jon, you told me this, that we are referring to the Creole as Cabo Verdeanu and not Cape Verdean Creole. Why are we making this distinction? And, why do we use one instead of using the other? And is one distinctly wrong to use, or versus the other, or is it a matter of preference?
Yeah, so it's not so just for the listeners to understand, um amongst ourselves, we will use criolu. Many times it's, people will say Cape Verdean Creole or Cape Verdean Criolu. That's completely fine. It's not considered wrong or even derogatory. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And like I said, just for purpose of ease, a lot of times we may say amongst ourselves, hey, Creole when we're speaking. That's how we'll reference the language. But it's important to understand that Creole it has several different definitions. Okay. So first, Creole was originally used to label a group of people, right? So people who were mixed, who were not what they would consider, purely of one race or nationality. So at one point, it was used to reference a group of people. From a linguistic standpoint, Creole is also a family of languages. So just like you have Latin languages, or you even have Germanic languages, Creole is a family of languages. And most of the time it's referring to languages that developed during the time period of the Atlantic slave trade. Also, Creole can refer to a phase that languages go through. So you have a pidgin, which is its most basic form.
Mm-hmm.
You have a Creole, and then later it develops into a language that is considered as standing on its own. It's almost like it has its own identity.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll give you an example, and it's a phase that all languages go through. Like for example, when there was a letter written in 63 AD, okay, and this was from a teacher, and he complained that a student spoke Latin incorrectly and was even writing in a way that was hard to understand. He said it's not even proper to put forth effort to recite it.
Hmm.
But linguists later discovered those were the roots of what was developing as French.
Whoa.
But now no one associates French with being at some point a pidgin or a Creole,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Because so much time has passed and the language has also been standardized.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first part, is that Creole can have several different definitions. So why then do we use Cabo Verdeano? So that actually came from in 1979 in the city of Mindelo, which is in São Vicente, which is one of the northern islands in Cape Verde. So after the independence of Cape Verde, then you had linguists, Cape Verdean linguists, such as Manuel Vega was one of them. You also had representatives from the International Phonetic Association, which they helped to come up with the idea of having a phonetic alphabet, not just for Cape Verde, but for a lot of these African nations that were breaking away from colonialism and wanted to have their language standardized in writing. Then you also had UNESCO there. And then you also had, the African International Institute. And so what they said is, you have many other, with these different definitions of Creole, you have other nations where you go there and they say, we speak Creole or Creole. So the question was presented, well, how do we distinguish what is ours from what the other nations are speaking?
Mm.
And so they wanted to find a way of labeling the language that addressed not just the language spoken, but also the people and the country that it represented. Henceforth, Cabo Verdeanu.
I see.
And so it was interesting because if you were to go to Louisiana and you say, I speak Creole, what will people think?
Mm.
Speak Louisiana Creole. Okay, we're on the
Right.
same page. Or if you go to parts of New Jersey or New York, it even happens in Boston where you say, I speak Creole. They may think you're talking about Haitian Creole.
Mm.
So you can say Cape Verdean Creole, but also Cabo Verdeano already gets that that label there. But whether you say Cape Verdean Creole, Creole, none of those are considered improper or incorrect at all.
Okay.
Luis Romano, he was not a linguist, but he studied a lot our oral tradition, okay?
Mhm.
And in 1971, he used the expression língua cabo-verdiana in a meeting in Brazil. I think he was the first person individually use this expression, okay, before our independence. But John, no, ninguém cadire a essa ideia.
Vou falar mais um verso,
Luís Romano, na 71, eu usa a expressão língua cabo-verdiana no Brasil.
Uh-huh.
Mas ninguém cada aquela importância, o que é que isto seria.
Oh, okay.
Tanto eu uso aquela expressão.
So what she said was, so in 1979, and when he used the expression língua cabo-verdiana, that's basically saying the Cape Verdean language. That's
Right.
Portuguese for the Cape Verdean language. But she said it's as if no one gave weight to it or attached as much importance to what he said, to his using that expression, Cape Verdean language or Cabo Verdean at that time. And that's why we're collaborating with Adeleide, because she's always breaking us off with the history. that part and all of the research that part I didn't know, but that was
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Yeah. And it's, it's always interesting how words get started and he may not even have thought that it was going to become the term. It was just something, and every day we have words that we use or we come up with, and you never know where the word is going to go. So I'm glad he used it. I'm glad he said it. And I'm glad someone was listening to record it and to keep using it. I want to talk about the language itself. I mean, we know that it is, well, I'm assuming I'm going to ask the questions that the listeners may be asking themselves, but what language is Cabo Verdeanu influenced by? What are the rules? As you said, Jon, there have to be rules. So tell us some of the rules. Is it a gendered languages? How are we forming sentences? And all the good stuff about speaking this language.
Okay, I will speak about the rules,
Okay.
and then Jon can add other things. You know, I am not, my English don't let me say
You speak
everything
good.
I want.
You speak good English.
Cape Verdean have strict rules.
Okay.
They said it is a language very economic because each word need to be in his place. As a Portuguese, French, or English, we have our sentence order is subject, verb, and complement.
Okay.
But we have some things different from Portuguese, for example. It was the language in the origin of our language, but we have something different. For example, we need always the subject is mandatory. I can't say one sentence without subject.
Okay.
I need to put it always. In Portuguese, not. Okay? But in French, yes.
Okay.
Other thing is the verb.
Do you have an example
Oh
of
yeah. I can say está direito. I will speak with Jon. Jon, está direito. Está direito.
Se uma me pergunta, sim, está direto. Está direto.
Creago.
Sim, creago.
But I said just creago is not correct. But he Ashner, because he know, okay, he know the sentence. But I didn't use the subject.
okay.
So I can say creago because I don't know who wants. What I want to say, I need to put always the subject because the verbs they don't change in the first, second, or third person.
Oh.
I can say first creago, I want water. Bu creago, you want water. Just listen, cre. You just listen always, cre. E creago. Third person, he. Nu creago. We want. Es crear, they want. So I need to change the subject, but not the verb. The verb is always the same word.
Oh man.
And it's why I need to put always the subject.
Which is why my response, I have to put, in my response, I put the subject.
Yeah.
I didn't just respond and say, crea agua. I didn't just respond and say, want water. I have to respond with identifying myself as the subject.
So in Portuguese, can you do it without the subject?
Yes, in Portuguese, you can say eu quero água or quero água.
Ah, okay.
But you said tu queres água. Quero, tu queres. So I can ask, queres água? Because the end of the verb is different from the first person.
Okay.
If you notice, Adeleide, she made a lot of reference, for example, comparing it to Portuguese. Right? So you asked about the language and some of its influences. So there are studies that have said that there's close to 90% of words used are borrowed from Portuguese.
Okay.
However, the structure of the language, the sentence structure, it follows closer to the West African languages. So for example, Wolof, Mandinka are just a couple of examples that the language structure has actually influenced Cabo Verdean. Even words, there are even words that trace back to African languages that are still that you find in Cabo Verdean as well. So, Mokifladu é um, um, bombo, o que buta foi menino, ayan,
Bombo menino.
ayan, yeah. So that's the expression. That's the expression where well, I wouldn't do it, but where the women will carry the baby on the back.
Uh-huh.
So that's just one example of the different words that you'll find where you say that's not Portuguese. So yes, so it does have an influence from Portuguese, and it does have an influence a lot from the West African languages that the slaves spoke when they
Mm-hmm.
were brought from West Africa over to the Cape Verde Islands.
Right. Right. Isn't that so interesting how from the west coast of Africa all the way to the Caribbean and the Americas. Like there are languages that still to this day retain either through their structure or their vocabulary influences from West African languages and how I don't know about you both, but I wasn't told this when I was growing up. And I think that especially in I can only speak for, being Black American, but so much of what we're told is it's not the whole story. And I think that uh, the kind of kid I was who was always interested in languages, I think knowing this, if I knew it when I was younger, I think I would have been so much more galvanized to maybe study linguistics or maybe study, linguistic history and how these connections are. I'm just finding this out like as an adult
Mhm.
now. And I just think it's obviously come from a very sad chapter in our history collectively in as African descendants, but um it's amazing what we can do with words and how we can make words our own and make
Mhm.
them fit into our own. I just think I said this before, it's like linguistic alchemy. I think that, you know, many of us African descendants have and have had over centuries. I just think it's so wonderful.
Yeah, it is. And you start to see that this is why it's important as you're learning a language to also understand more of the culture,
Mm,
because words have meaning beyond just the definition. And so you can have a definition, but the word or its origins can mean so much more, and it adds to it.
hmm
Um, I also think that it's amazing because we're at an interesting time right now, especially when it comes to linguistic studies, because of two things. You have social media where everyone has a voice, even the locals,
mm,
so they can now also represent their language. And you also have, because of technology, linguists are trying to study and capture language quicker, because before, what was defined as a language and rules to a language, a lot of that was behind closed doors amongst a group of let's just say linguists, educated people, or even if you go further back, kings and queens
hmm
that would determine it. And so the local people, when it came to the language and standardizing a language, before, a lot of times it would come top down. The king puts a decree, and this is what it needs to be. But now a lot of it is coming from the bottom up.
right.
And so a lot of the information, too, because of technology and the internet, people are saying, "Hey, this book that I just found, let me go ahead, let me reference this in a paper that I'm going to write." And so that's how information, just like what Adelaide shared about what happened in 1971, information like that is shared. But
Right.
that's one of the things too that's really pushing the interest when it comes to Cabo Verdeanu is that so many people now have a voice, and now you're starting to notice like a lot of information that was siloed before is now about the language and its origins is now coming out.
Yeah.
I just wanted to backtrack really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Just one more thing that we were talking about with the difference when it comes to some of the rules of Cabo Verdeano. In a lot of your Latin languages, for example, in Portuguese, inanimate objects can be given a gender. In Portuguese, you could either say vermelho or vermelha to basically say red when it's applying to something that's masculine or red when it's applying to something that's feminine.
Mm-hmm.
But in Cabo Verdeano, you don't do that. Brumejo is brumejo. The color is the color. So whether
Right.
you're applying this color to a vestido, which is a dress,
Mm-hmm.
or a carro, you're always going to make sure that because it's an inanimate object, the color or its description doesn't change. You're not changing the gender of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm already in love. This is like so. Oh,
It
oh,
makes
I
it
love it.
easier to learn.
Yes.
It makes it a lot. It's important for the listeners. Do not confuse this saying that it's easier to learn with saying that it's a simple
Mm.
language,
Oh
as
yeah,
if
of
it's not
course.
as
No,
if it's
yeah,
not complex. That's not the
Mm-hmm.
case.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these rules that you have in other languages,
Mm-hmm.
where it's so old that no one really knows the origin or it just kind of bogs down the language. That's the beauty of Cabo Verdeano, is that a lot of that has not been applied or captured into the language at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
for the people knows the other language, like Roman language, Portuguese or French or Roman. We in Creole we do everything they do in this that language, but we have other strategies to do this.
Mm.
So maybe in some study in the past, this is this different strategy we use. The Portuguese linguistic in that time doesn't know how Cape Verdean works how works the sentence, the order sentence in Cape Verdean. So they say in Creole, they said Creole, they don't have this, they don't have this. Now, it's not this the way to say thing. We have everything, but we do this a different way.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's a different way. Another way, just to add what John said, as example, the bombo is to put the baby in the bed.
Mm-hmm.
We have conco.
Mhm.
Conco is knock at the door.
Ah.
Yeah, we say conco. The majority words you can use for two onomatopoeias, John.
Oh, onomatopoeia.
Onomatopoeia.
Hmm.
Yeah, is African, is the African language, and they end in u. So it's the things interesting to study.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you notice any similarities between Cabo Verdeano and other Portuguese-based creoles?
Listen, this is not what we expected, but it's what happened. For example, it was expected we understand the two creoles in the São Tomé,
Mm.
but we didn't understand.
Hmm.
We can identify some suffix, but we with the same role, but not with the same pronunciation.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But we understand the Creole of Guinea-Bissau,
Oh, okay.
okay? And we understand tu papiamento.
Oh.
It's interesting because with papiamento we have a lot of similarity. And maybe we have some words, but with different meanings.
Mm-hmm.
but you have something tell you it was the same. I try to remember one word with Gideon. I speak with him Creole, and sometimes we start
Laugh.
to laugh,
Mhm.
and he tell me, I know the word, but it's not in the place I used in the papiamento.
How interesting.
Yeah, and we understand not everything, but we can recognize the words and understand some sentence with Papia Cristão. Papia Cristão is a criollo based Portuguese, but in the Orient.
In Asia.
Yes, is the Asian Portuguese Creole. São crioulos asiáticos de base portuguesa.
Yeah, so yeah, that's correct. So basically she's saying Portuguese Creoles from Asia
Yeah.
because of the expansion of the Portuguese Empire.
Yeah.
So actually one of the gentlemen that we'll reference later, he did studies on all of these what was Creole languages across the entire Portuguese Empire. And so those were some of.
I would love to know, when someone like me is coming to visit or wants to visit, what are some things that we can experience? And I guess, I ask this because anyone can look in a brochure and find, top 10 things to do in blah, blah, blah. But from a perspective of a local, from a perspective of someone who is passionate about your culture, your language, your heritage, what are some things that should be experienced? And what are some things that, what are some traditions that we can experience, or we can maybe not experience is the right word, but something we can see, or something we can, something we can see, in Cabo Verde, and that's not the typical.
Okay, you need to first know some words in Creole.
Okay, check.
Some words in Creole. You need to know you come to a country. You come to a country. You don't have the things to theater, cinema, okay, stores, okay. You don't have. You have some, but you don't have. I go to buy some now, okay. You need to see the simple things as how the family live in Cape Verde. Okay, we have some traditional food you can eat in the morning, okay, couscous, but I think Jon will explain you. So we have a traditional breakfast, okay, with couscous, longuiça, the things we eat in the morning. You need to come with to go to the beach. You need to go to the beach, okay, because we have sun all the years. You need to know someone can bring you in the family, okay, in the family, because our family in Cape Verde, our family in Cape Verde, we have the simple things as we eat, okay, 3 times. We eat 3 times. We do lunch. We do lunch, but it's simple things. Rice always, okay, rice always. But the more interesting, this word is so difficult for me.
No, you said it right. Interesting.
Yeah, but the more interesting is the end of the day. Okay, when everybody do works we need to do, we like to stay each other. Okay, we like to stay with each other. Maybe in some family is more than others. Okay, in the family, not in the city. In the family, you have some women like to play batuco. Batuco is something, is a traditional dancing, just with humans, okay? But it's not just the dancing. They said play batuco, but it's adult, okay? They play batuco because in the end of the day, the humans stay in touch. Stay in touch. Someone play and the other sing, but it's not singing. No, no. Is to say some words, okay? Maybe advice, maybe to tell the good or the bad things happening, okay? And the others need to do something like this. I don't know. And they have different meanings. This is a traditional things you need to see in such family. But today you can find it in the hotel, in the restaurant, okay? Because we have the groups. So what I want to add is the music. Everything where you go, you see the boys with the violin,
Or the guitar.
The guitar.
yeah, guitar. Okay, they play and they sing. They play and they sing alone. Okay, this is a marker from Cape Verde.
Yeah.
Today, you have the groups, okay, and you have the singers as a cesaria. Cesaria begins in this space, in this familiar space, okay? So this is the good thing that you can see and feel in the end of the day. And you have different rhythms. Batuco, funaná, coladeira, batuco, funaná, coladeira, and you have our music, maybe morna, okay, morna is something slow. In the past, they dance a lot, but today is just to listen. But what the morna is what is important in the morna? Because morna start with maybe 19, I don't know, but maybe 18th century. The letters of the morna is to describe the love, the love we feel, the love left for the country to work, is to tell the things happen. Okay, you have the morna or in the batuco, but it's two things different, but the theme is the same.
Okay.
Morna, for example, is something so important for us. In 2019, UNESCO classified this music as I need to read intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Okay, because Cesare do this as a star, but in each corner in Cape Verde, you can listen the people, okay, the young people, the elder people with the violin and singing, morna, okay, M-O-R-N-A.
Yeah.
A lot of things, but this is important: the dance, the music, and the food. Food. I know Jon wanted to say something.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things. So food, yes, I wanted to touch just on what Adelaide was saying is that there are depending on where you go when it comes to the batuk, you can see groups and even competitions
Mm.
because that also is now considered like part of the national heritage of
Ah.
of of Cabo Verde.
Mm-hmm.
Food, yes, couscous. So you have couscous, which is like they even have like a, I guess it would be considered almost like a cake or like a cornbread kind of to give someone an idea. But it's actually made with like a clay pot, like a steamed clay pot, assim, de barro, assim, para fazer couscous. So they'll make like they'll steam it. You can have it then with leite dormido. So with like
Oh,
sabe? Leite
Is that
dormido.
a favorite?
Yeah, you can
yes,
tell she
good.
like her. It's good. Yeah. So it's basically it's with buttermilk.
Okay.
What is known in the States as buttermilk.
Okay.
Okay, or leite dormido or sour milk.
Sour milk, yeah.
hmm So that's really good, and you can even have it sometimes with honey. Actually, uh, a neighbor, she actually even puts canela or she actually
Oh,
cinnamon. She puts
Cinnamon.
cinnamon,
yes,
and
it
it's like it's so good. So you have
Whoa.
that cachupa, which is
Mm-hmm.
also considered the national dish, right? So cachupa is basically it's corn, um, beans. You know, here you have so many different types of beans. So with the beans, um, you the like cachupa rico, that's where it has all of that. Then you have with pork. If you can have it with beef, uh, cabbage, squash, carrots, um, onions, garlic. So it's a hearty stew.
Mm.
And each, even potatoes, different families will kind of have their own kind of recipe for it for how they want to make it. So my mother-in-law makes it different than from what some of my other friends will put
Mm-hmm.
in it. So the cachupa that you have to experience. Something that I think is really nice also is what you have. It's called grogu. Grogu. Now you have it could be known to some as a moonshine. Okay,
Okay.
it's a rum. However, there are some brands now that they are they're aging it. So not you can have neighbors or people who may produce it,
Mm-hmm.
but also there's some where they're producing it and they're letting it age even more.
Oh, okay.
So it's now something that's becoming more of um what do you call it? Almost like is it a delicacy, I guess you could say, in some instances, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, there's a brand, um, I don't work with them or anything like that. I'm not getting paid for this. But an example is a brand is called Nyakana.
Yakana.
Nyakana. And it's a brand where they age it and they even had one where they aged it in barrels from, I believe it was like Jack Daniel barrels that they used to give it a
Oh,
different taste. But each
interesting.
island, like
Mm-hmm.
Santanton, like each island, each area has their grogo. There's ponche also, which is pretty much like almost like a liqueur. The vinho from Fogo. Fogo has volcanic. It has volcanic. There's volcanoes there, so the ground in which these grapes go it has a lot of sulfur. It's volcanic land.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, it provides a unique taste. Fogo is also an island that's known for coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to taste the coffee.
I was gonna say, John, I'm in the New York City area. Are there any airlines that fly directly to Cape Verde, or would I have to transfer someplace else. Because all of this, I'm like, I need to taxi to the airport. Like, I just want to know how long it's going to take me. Can I get on a direct flight? Do I got to stop in Lisbon or like what?
Hey, well technically it's not that far. You know 3 hours, maybe like 3 hours. You could be over in Boston, and then you just get a flight. But
Okay.
but yeah, and one of the things that's nice is that the foods, it, you know, you can buy fresh fish. They caught it. It's put on a truck. Even if you were to go, for example, if you go to the island of Santiago, you can go to like for example, Tarrafal or Ribeira da Barca, and in Ribeira da Barca, you'll actually see them um, pulling off the boats. They have, yep, with the fish, and you could go ahead and make your purchase right there.
Mhm.
There's also a area that's now that I'm thinking about Ribeira da Barca, it's called Águas Belas. Já ouviu falar umbes? Adelaide, Águas
No,
Belas?
no conheço.
Okay.
No. He knows everything.
So Águas Belas, it's considered one of the wonders of Cape Verde, but it's a very beautiful beach. And there you will see like on the rocks, I guess it's like the algae or whatever, it's like pink. I'll send you a picture, but it's the rocks are pink, but it's so beautiful and it's very peaceful. A lot of the beaches will have a lot of people there, but it's very peaceful.
Mm.
Okay, so going back to the fish, so you could get fresh fish. Um, when it comes to produce, like I told you, like right now it's mango season, so you'll see trees if they haven't picked them already. You'll see trees bent over because the mangoes are so heavy. Like if you go to some areas like after
Fair.
Ribeira da Barca, you go to some areas like Charco, they have like mango trees there, papaya, bananas. You can know people who they raise the pig, they raise the cow. You know that where you're getting the goat milk from, especially when you go into like the interior.
Mm.
Which now that I'm thinking about goat milk, the queijo de fogo. So fogo also has really delicious goat cheese. I'm not sure if you're a big person on goat cheese,
Yeah, I love goat
but
cheese.
oh, I was like viciado. Like we went when we went to my wife's aunt's house in
Hmm.
Fogo.
Hmm.
So I had the goat cheese and I it was bad. I ate so much goat cheese that I was like so congested. I was I got so congested because I'm like, hey, I don't know when I'm gonna get another shit.
You risked it all for the goat cheese.
But
That's funny.
good.
Mhm.
It was good.
Yeah.
So as far as natural foods, like you can find it. You can
Hmm.
find it. But
Yeah.
the foods in Cape Verde are delicious. And then just one last thing that's traditional that I think is very beautiful is the pano di terra.
Hmm.
Pano di terra. So I can even send you a picture of it. But it's a design. It is a it's made from cotton, so it's like it can be a almost like a scarf or a shawl too.
Hmm.
In a lot of the older pictures, you'll see like the older women with like a huge shawl, but it's a beautiful design that's unique to Cabo Verde.
Mm.
And so even on the passeio, um, Buconchi que passeio lá naquela praça, lá Plateau,
Sim.
Bu sabe que lá tem aquele desenho de pano de terra, lá na
Oh, yeah. Sim.
nunca dá conta
Yeah.
de você.
Dura que identificar. Dura que
Aham,
identificar
sim,
aquela que
aham,
estava.
sim, mas deve pintá-lo outro peço.
Yeah.
So, when you when you visit Cape Verde, when you go to they have this area called Plateau. You'll even see it. They have like a walkway, kind of like in this little plaza, where you can kind of see it designed on the ground. But I'll show you a picture. But it's a very beautiful design that's unique
Yeah.
to Cabo Verde. But
Oh
that's something that's
man.
also a part of the culture.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, Adelaide even
Yeah.
mentioned the music, so
I was
and the
gonna
music is one of
say,
the things that's really taken off too.
yeah,
With
I was gonna say about music, like Cesaria is my queen. Like
Mhm.
I worship her. And I actually didn't know of her music until she passed away because it was in the newspaper here. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, who's this? And then I started listening to her music and I was like so sad because I didn't know her until she passed away.
Yeah, yeah.
And I listened to her on a weekly basis, like a
Mm,
weekly basis. And I don't know what she sings. I don't know the words, but I I I
You
get it.
feel,
I feel it. I
yeah.
feel it. And I like worship her. Um and I think that just, being for me being and having that opportunity to be exposed to music from Cape Verde is like amazing. And I think listening to music from Cape Verde, I only started listening to after I started listening to Cesaria. So hearing that there's so much variety in the music, like I want to search even more and even more and even more because I just think I think it's unique. And I think, from what I've heard so far, it's unique and the tonality and it's really beautiful. So there's a lot to discover in Cape Verde. And for people who are listening, like, I hope they're as enthusiastic as I am to learn as much as I've learned from you both today. I'd love to hear more about your work and what you're doing with Learn Cabo Verdeanu and, individually, things that you're working on as far as the language. And most importantly, tell us where we can find you
mhm.
online.
Okay. So I'm one of the founders and linguists of Learn Cabo Verdeanu. Um, w- this started simply as a project because we we wanted to, like I said, we wanted the way we see other kids in other languages love books. We wanted to see kids do that here in Cape Verde. We want to see Cape Verdean kids have their favorite books. So it
Mm,
started off with that kind of project. Adults wanted to learn, and then eventually that kind of mushroomed into or went into a an online project. So at this point, um, we are we're working. We released a few months ago. We released a web app which has our content in an online dictionary that has definitions in Caverdiano, English, and also Portuguese.
okay.
And so right now we're just working on improving that. We've recently started collaborating even more so with Adeleide, who's helping us as one of the instructors, and also being that she works at the the
Instituto
Ministério de
Património.
Cultura. Modi?
Instituto Património Cultural de Ministério da Cultura.
Yeah.
That's okay,
Yeah. So
Ministério da Cultura.
yeah. So the cultural institute at the Cultural Institute in Cape Verde. So her input has been her being one of the head linguists. Her input has been linguistic and also when it comes to cultural aspects that we have for our online program. And
Hmm.
they can find us at learncaboverdianu.com. We have a ton of videos on YouTube. So just type in Learn Cabo Verdeanu and there you can find us. Um, but yeah, so we're happy to be collaborating with Adeleide, who Adelaide, you can tell them some of the other things that you're working on as well.
Now, I just want to say thank you here for everybody listening us. thank you to learn Cabo Verdeanu, because I found something I was looking for, but I don't know it is existing. Because my work is to study and promote Cape Verdean language. So I do it in my job, but it's not the same thing because we learn Cabo Verdeano. The things go so fast, and and they they do the good a lot things and so fast. And for me it is an opportunity to do what I want to do, is to promote Cape Verde, not alone, because it's a lot of things to do, and I can join English with it. So it's good for Cape Verde, okay? Not just Cape Verde, but we promote Cape Verde, and they with the English, they know English, and like this we can go in the different way of the different. It's not way, it's different place in the world. I just congrats learn Cabo Verdeano, because they do a good and important job for our language.
Thanks for your help. One of the things she mentioned when she said that it was a breath of fresh air and we move fast was that when we started this, sometimes the language, it can go through these phases where everyone's so enthusiastic and they can have a meeting, everyone's so enthusiastic, but then the enthusiasm can sometimes wane when there maybe is not government support financially to back programs, or when it seems like certain things, maybe like the officialization of the language, may seem as if it's taken a little bit too long. Our mindset was independent of that. We could still make stories for kids.
Yeah.
Independent of that, we could still develop a program. Independent of that, we can still put instructional videos on the internet. And so I think when Adelaide said we move fast, it was because a lot of the programs that people have mentioned about implementing, we already just started to implement it. Of course, we always do our research. So that's one of she says we move fast. I think sometimes we move slow, but it's because we want to make sure that things are in accord with the standards. There's no, I always tell people this. They say, why does it take you guys so long to translate a language, to translate an article or to do this or that? I say, because there's no autocorrect.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Like when we write something, the quality, and this is maybe for listeners, if you know someone who's a proofreader or who's a linguist and who writes in Cabo Verdeanu, understand that it takes a lot of work, because there's no program that says this sentence structure is wrong. There's no program that says this spelling is wrong, or how you use this particular adjective is wrong. It's all based on your ability to mentally quickly reference the research that you have done, and also to be aware of how the language is being spoken.
Yeah.
And so we really appreciate Adelaide's assistance too, because she was all for it. Even when we send emails, it's in Cabo Verdeanu. The system, the back end of the system that we use when we're posting, hey, this is a deadline, this or that, the community of the group is, okay, put it in Cabo Verdeanu. And if someone ever says, "Oh, I got to write it in Portuguese because it's too hard," we say, "Okay, take another day and find out how would you explain it to your sister, or how would you explain it to the boss at this other job?"
Mm-hmm.
And the words come because you're already using it. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes you may have a
Yeah.
mental block.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
I like that thought process behind what you're doing. And you sent me your platform and you sent me some materials, and what you've got is so robust, at least from what I can see as someone who, hasn't yet started learning the language. But you have so much there already. So I think that you are on the right path. I think what you're doing is wonderful, and I wish you so much success going forward.
thank you very much. Thanks for giving us this part. We normally don't we normally don't do interviews. We're normally in the background, right, Adelaide? It's more like, okay, we're in a, but we do appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, and I what my show is doing is probably not as powerful as what you are doing, but if I can play any part in helping to promote Cabo Verdeanu and support what you're doing, I'm happy to do that. If this is just a tiny piece of your pie, I'm happy to be that, and I'm really excited for people to hear this episode and to learn more about the language and the culture and the food and the music and the beaches and everything, because it's so special in my imagination. It's special, and now talking to you both, I realize like it's really special. So I can't wait to get on that direct flight from Logan Airport to Cape Verde.
Yes,
Do this,
look
do
us up.
this.
Yes, look us up, look us up. Yes,
I will add links to your platform in the show notes for this episode so that people who want to get in touch, people who want to reach out, people who want to learn Cabo Verdeano can find you right away.
thank you very
Yeah,
much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it again.
so I like to end each episode with the same question, just to end things on a fun note. Do you have any jokes, popular sayings, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in Cabo Verdeano to share and to teach me how to say?
Okay, I can use the expression. The expression is not from me, it's from Bibinha Cabral. It was an elder human, a special woman. She don't know Portuguese, but she was a philosopher
Okay.
in Creole.
Okay.
So the expression is cima não está, nunca pode ficar. Cima não crê, nunca pode estar.
Okay.
Mas cima não está, nunca pode ficar.
Okay.
That means we are not as we want to stay. But as we are, we can stay.
Okay.
So we need to change. We need not to stay, okay, that's not good, but okay. So I like this, and I think this is from what we do, me and learn Cabo Verdeano, okay?
Mhm.
We are not where how we want, but we can stay like we are.
Okay.
So to teach you, you can repeat with me?
Yes, I will repeat after you.
Ok. Cima no crê,
Cima no crê,
nunca pode,
nunca pode,
fica.
fica, fica, fica,
Fica. Ma,
ma,
cima não está,
cima no está,
nunca pode, fica.
Podifika. How did I do?
That's pretty good. That's why she's smiling.
That's okay. You want to repeat again?
Let's do it one more time.
One more time.
Yeah.
Okay. This is correct. Cima no crê,
Cima no crê,
nunca pode estar,
nunca pode estar,
mas
mas
cima não está,
cima no está,
nunca pode ficar.
nunca pode ficar.
This is good.
Okay.
That's better.
So the second one was better than the first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is correct. It's why it's the people who was changing this. Okay. Yeah, that's why, because this is oral. And the people go to change.
Yeah.
But the last one is the original.
Qual que é aquele outro que não estava a falar? Se nunca acabado?
E se acabado, catabirado.
Yeah, se acabado, catabirado. So it gives this sense of if you, it could mean two things, but it really, because this is at the airport in Praia, and it gives the idea of if you don't go, then you can't come back. And it kind of really encapsulates the idea of the Cape Verdeans immigrating to other countries, but a lot of times maintaining that connection with Sestera.
Yeah.
And you even see it. There's this. I even saw it with, for example, with my wife's grandfather. But there's this idea of like, hey, when I get old, I want to, when I pass away, I want to be in my land. So they can be in another country for decades, but there's always this longing of, I have to, this course I've taken, I have to finish it in my land.
Yeah. Wow.
And then you also know that Cape Verdeans in the diaspora always support Cape Verde. So there's always this idea of, doesn't matter what country you go to, you always are going to try to find your way back to Cape Verde.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So those two sayings. Just one last thing. When you meet an older person, if it's an older woman, you refer to her as Nya.
Nya? Oh, that's what that means? Okay.
It can mean two things. It can mean Nya as in my. Like, Nyakas. It could mean my, but when you're addressing an older person or someone and you want to show them respect, you refer to them as Nya. Modi kinyasta. But if it's an older man, you'll use Nyo. Modi kinyosta. Well,
there's a song by Cesaria. Jon Skadero. And I tried like Googling it and I cannot find like translations of her. Stop laughing at me.
Told you this is hard. No one's proofreading it.
I could not find translations of her songs. So I always hear that word in her songs and I had no idea what it means. And as soon as you said it, I'm like, the light bulb went off. Like, oh, okay, I'm getting somewhere now. I don't often sing on this show, but it just
that might be another podcast.
Yeah,
that might be another podcast.
So I interrupted you. You were talking about addressing an older woman or older gentleman.
Yeah, that's it. If you want to show the older woman respect, you'll refer to her as Nya. And then an older gentleman, you'll refer to him as Nyo.
Nyo. I can't believe that. I'm a little eclectic sometimes, but
no, that's cool that you made that connection.
Yeah.
That shows that you're listening.
Yeah. I'm always listening to my queen. Jon and Adeleide, thank you so much for this conversation. I had a wonderful time chatting with you both and learning from you both. And I can't wait to see you one day in Cape Verde for real. And this has been a wonderful conversation. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Before,
thank you so much.
And come in from Cape Verde.
yeah, I'll be there as soon as financially possible. Um, before I let you go, just one quick question. Don't think about the answer too hard, but in this situation, after you've been talking to someone for quite some time and you've been having a nice conversation and you're about to go your separate ways, in Cape Verde, what is the best way for you to say goodbye?
Oh,
Mhm.
we use tchau.
Ciao.
Então, fica direito.
Fica preto.
Stay well.
Stay well.
Tchau, goodbye, and stay well. Tchau is goodbye.
Ciao is goodbye. Fica preto.
Você sabe que o Zé Quiçá tá pensando também é aquele que não está junto.
Oh,
Que gosta,
yeah, that's,
que
oh,
gosta de
yeah,
falar
that's
do
good.
teu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. It's good
Sometimes
for this situation.
sometimes you'll say não está junto, where it's almost like, I guess literally it means we're together.
Oh.
Kind of like almost like, if we're gonna see each other again, we're together on this, right? So like, okay, não está junto is what's all, yeah. Não está
Yeah,
junto.
that's não estou junto.
Nostra junto. Nostra junto. Thank you so much again, and I will be talking to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.